We're live.
We did it.
Yeah, because I asked you.
Yes,
Hello!
but you didn't know. Hello! But you didn't know from. We never said exactly what color we were going to do.
I knew what shirt you were wearing.
Actually, it was a 50-50 shot of getting it right or wrong. So.
Yeah, something like that.
Welcome to Generational Change.
I'm Jen.
I'm Peter, and we're still not together, but we're connected.
Yeah, this is not a good look. Like, seriously, if you're going to be gone a lot, we really need to like up your camera and up. Like, it's not a good look.
So we have a. Hi, Jen. Sorry, I'm Michael. I just want to say thank you for going on. I completely agree to everything you said, even though you are a Jew. Happy to be. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, Billy. I mean, even a proud
compliment.
Listen, even a proud Southerner can throw you a bone every once in a while.
That's all right.
You have amazing crossover appeal, Jen.
I do. Well, because the truth is that I'm a civil libertarian and I fully support the Second Amendment. So, which is not always a thing on the left. I think that's part of it. And, I'm pretty reasonable.
Well,
yeah, but yeah, I was born a Jew, I can't really help it.
Look,
why don't I just stop being? Because here's the thing. Really, an ideal Democrat, like if the Democrats were what they're supposed to be, meaning the party of labor, and also I am pro-choice. I am opposed to the death penalty. Not that the Democrats are opposed to the death penalty. I support a social safety net. So even though I'm a civil libertarian and I'm very live and let live, I believe that we have responsibility for our collective. We all do. And so I feel that we need to provide a social safety net. And so in theory, that's a Democrat. But also in my district, the only way anyone could ever win this seat is as a Democrat anyway.
I think it goes without saying that the culture war has completely divided us in such a really, pointless kind of way, because, you're bringing up things that people don't really have any control over. And what's interesting about, Morgan Harper coming back on the show is the fact that she's running in a state that really, I think I've mentioned before specifically that if you're going to have a state that's going to replace, a state like Iowa is the first in the nation, a state like Ohio, I think is very representative of the whole country because it has a little of everything. And that's kind of what this is about. Somebody like Billy Crumb is not somebody that we probably would find too much in common with politically. But the fact that we could have just a normal discourse, I think, is a key to unwrapping so much of this problem that we're facing today.
Well, and I actually find that it's interesting when you answer things based on science and reason, really, like you make decisions based on what's reasonable, what suits the majority of people based on being in a democracy, that you can kind of get most people onto what you're doing because you're acting with reason and not some sort of just dogma. And no, I do not ever defend. I don't defend the Democrats. They're embarrassing. It's embarrassing, really. I wish it weren't, but it is. Anyway, so our first guest is here, and we've had Morgan on before. So, guys, Morgan is running for U.S. Senate in Ohio, and their race is coming up. I think it's May 3rd. And we're actually going to be up there that weekend before for Get Out the Vote. But Morgan is running a non-corporate statewide race. And that is very exciting and very impressive. So without further ado, friend, former BNC slate mate. Hi, Morgan.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. Feels like a long time ago that I was here.
It was a long time ago. And, how has this been for you running a statewide race? I mean, obviously the time management thing is a whole different animal.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what you were just saying, Jen, about leading with reason and getting directly to people with things that make sense. Totally holds true. I mean, that's been one of the most exciting things about this campaign is being able to travel to all different parts of Ohio. And like Peter was saying, it has a little bit of everything. We have a lot of cities. We have mid-sized cities. We have formerly manufacturing cities. We have white collar cities. We have small towns. We have completely agricultural rural areas. and hearing such consistent things from all of these people. So that's the privilege I feel in being able to, run this race, to talk to so many people and report out, hey, look, turns out we all need the same things. Everybody's really pissed off at the healthcare system, and folks are really concerned about our young people and these drug epidemics, and wanting to make sure that we just can get jobs that pay enough to stay in the area where you're from and stay close to your family. So that's exciting, because once we make those connections, well, then now we just all need to be working together to elect the people that are going to push for the solutions.
Yeah, I think people are way more reasonable when you stop saying talking points and you start actually just explaining how things work. Most people are actually fairly reasonable.
Yes.
It's true. Now, those are not the people that we see and hear from, because those are just your regular people, but they are. And one thing that I think, and I'm sure you agree, that's I think extremely encouraging and will help with your campaign and others, is what's going on with labor right now. And this whole sort of uprising in labor, I think, is very nonpartisan. And it's very based on what's reasonable for most people. So this is as populist as it gets. And I think that wave is only going to help campaigns like yours. I mean, what's your feel out there in canvassing with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think this awareness that large corporations have really screwed us over, and that even in this moment of global pandemic and the war and all of this, that their greed knows no bounds in many ways, and being willing to raise prices and all of that. So yeah, no, I think there's a real galvanizing moment. I mean, the reality though, still running a non-corporate campaign, is that our biggest challenge is getting the word out and having the resources to make sure that people have heard about this, that you have an alternative, that you have a choice in this election that isn't just politics as usual. But the message is landing for sure, and the people are ready to go.
Yeah. I just think the timing is really like almost a perfect storm right now in terms of people's frustration level with just the general oligarchy, and just really sick and tired of it.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing that we're finding. And now we have data to back it up, in a place like Ohio that some national people are writing off as, oh, it's completely Trumpian, that you find, we find our voters over 80%, in some cases supporting Medicare for all, for example, over 80% want an increase in the minimum wage. And this is what Ohio really is. Ohio is a progressive place. We just haven't had leadership that's kept up with where the people are going and the real experiences that folks are having on the ground. So yeah, it's a perfect storm in many ways. Our biggest challenge now, with just a few days to go, which is again hard to believe, on May 3rd, is just getting the word out. So yeah, we just, we're hustling, door knocking, texting, the phones, we've released an ad, which is going over really well. And so we just have to keep pushing.
Yeah.
Speaking with Morgan Harper, candidate for the U.S. Senate in the state of Ohio, this race didn't really, get enough attention for several months. And unfortunately, it took the GOP, being the much more Democratic party, having debates amongst every one of the candidates. Obviously, now J.D. Vance has clearly moved to the front of the line with Trump's endorsement, among other things. Your primary opponent, Congressman Ryan, decided that he was basically just going to ignore you from us. And I will say that I did watch the debate between you and the two other candidates, and you are so far and away the better candidate, it's not even funny. And so the idea of avoiding you is, to me, it was simply a question of, I'm not that good of a candidate and I'm corporate, so I don't want people to actually hear Morgan's message. Because if they do, chances are I might actually be in a legitimate race here. But the truth is, when somebody like Trump, who is immensely popular in Ohio, just like he is here in Florida, puts his thumb on the scale for a race as he has in your state and in Pennsylvania, that means that whoever is going to win the primary and ultimately in the general is going to win if they are the populist candidate. Tim Ryan is anything but a populist candidate. And so the Democrats in the state better recognize that if they do not nominate somebody like yourself who is not bought by the machine, they have zero chance in November. Zero. So, talk about the importance of what that first debate meant to you and where the momentum has been ever since as a result of, obviously, this important message about economic populism, which is the order of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't even tell you how frustrating it was not to be able to have an opportunity earlier. And again, it's not just about me, it's not about my campaign. We're at a place as a country, as a state, y'all are feeling it too in Florida. We experience very similar things, I would say, in terms of what's happening at the state legislature and all that, of democracy. What does it mean? And if we're really going to be a Democratic Party and really stand up for democracy, well, then we don't hide in corners and hope for the best or have Republicans that are going to out discourse us. Like, we need to be aggressively out there. And, the fact that it took until, what date was that? Maybe you know better than I do. What was our date? It was March 20th.
It was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I still think the only reason that he debated you had nothing to do with you. It had everything to do with the party insiders saying, if the GOP is doing debates and we're not, we're toast. And that was basically it.
Yes, by the end of this campaign, they will have done 13 candidate forums and debates since they all got started.
And you have done
one. And we have a candidate forum coming up this Thursday. I do want to shout out Ohio Young Black Dems that's hosting that. But as you all know, candidate forums are different than debates. Candidate forums, you don't interact. Candidate forums, you don't get to counter what someone else has said. And so it's a lot less, I would say, informative for the voters about what some of the candidates stand for, and then really forcing the candidates to defend their positions. Because as we saw in that debate, when push comes to shove and Congressman Ryan has to really back up some of the things that he has done and stood for, well, then we get him saying things like, I'll take money from anybody. What's the big deal, right? Or Joe Manchin, yeah, I voted for Build Back Better and then I took Joe Manchin's money. What's the big deal? It's like, it's all a big deal. It's a very big deal. This is why people hate Washington, D.C. This is why we do not win. And if we're going to restore trust in this whole political system, well, then you need to actually believe the things that you stand for and really mean it and follow through on it. And I completely agree with you here. I mean, people are hip to what is going on. And so, I mean, another telling moment in that debate was when, I confronted him about how much money he's taking from the defense contractor industry, over $400,000 over the course of his career. He's like, well, those are jobs that are coming to Ohio. I was like, excuse me? You need to take bribes in order to produce jobs for us as a state? And by the way, you've been overseeing a district that has lost its manufacturing sector over your 20-year career, that 50,000 people have moved away from in your 20-year career. So spare me the necessity for taking bribes from very large corporations in order to have an economic development strategy. Get a better one.
This is one of the reasons why, and I say it all the time, it's ironic that the Republican Party is more Democratic than the Democratic Party. They don't have super delegates. They actually do have debates with their candidates. Like, the Democrats do everything they can to basically get rid of any challenge or of discourse or anything like that, because then they would actually have to have a platform. They would actually have to do something. And I don't think they really want to. I think they like Republicans being in power. I know they love them in the White House. They make major fundraising and they don't have to do anything. And right now, we can see it. We have a Democrat in the White House. We have a Democrat majority in Congress, and we can't do anything because Joe Manchin? Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, they can't even come up with reasons why they can't do anything.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say, just in terms of Republicans and democracy, I mean, we have to be real about the fact that all this gerrymandering, map redrawing, I mean, they've just blown through all these deadlines here in Ohio. So certainly don't want to suggest that Republicans are the beacon of democracy by any means. But, when it comes to these primaries, I mean, clearly just look at our race. They're a lot more comfortable with inviting that kind of competition and open dialogue. And that's what real people want. I was just talking to someone we were at the Hamilton County and Cincinnati Board of Elections today because early vote has started here. And they were telling me, just a regular person that shows up and is like, why would we not know everyone who's in a primary? Like, I only heard about you through X internet thing, but why doesn't the party tell us all the Democrats who are running? It's like, that's a great question, because they don't, I agree with you, because it's not about winning. It's about your person winning. And even if they end up losing, well, we gave it a good college try. Yeah. But the stakes are very high in Ohio right now. And, it's beyond elections at this point. It's like we are losing a generation of people, lost to death, literally death, drug overdoses, gun violence, mental health, suicide, all of it. And we need to come together and really be aggressive here about what it's going to take to win for a future for us as a state, for a country.
Yeah.
Speaking with Morgan Harper, candidate for U.S. Senate in Ohio, there goes without saying, you brought up a great point, which of course is they don't want to win with their corporate selected candidate. And that in itself is really the problem here. The GOP has one rule. You can primary whoever you want. You can fight amongst yourselves. As soon as the general election rolls around, you vote against the Democrat, period. That's the end of the discussion. But on the other side, we have we have this civil war, if you will, that's going on right now, where we're trying to wrestle control away from the corporate power that basically has dominated the party for the better part of 2 generations. And that is a very hard, nut to crack. And obviously in this case, it's very hard, if not the hardest, to do it at this particular level. Ohio is a state of major electoral consequence. Every election cycle, whether it is for governor, senator, or the president of the United States. And so right now, obviously, we're seeing what's happening with some of the other races, particularly the race in Ohio for Nina Turner and Shontel Brown. And of course, this race goes without saying, it's very significant. The only way that we are ever going to plow through, because I believe we're going to, it does take time. These things do not happen overnight. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't win, you have established yourself as somebody who is not going away, who is actually bringing ideas to the table.
Much to the dismay of the party.
Of course, let it be to the dismay of them, because they don't really have much to work with. Their whole concept, the whole concept of the corporatocracy is this idea that I can scare the hell out of you by pointing to the other side and telling you what you're going to get if you go with them. But they're not actually offering anything, because what we want is stuff that isn't being offered by the powers that be. Even today, somebody who unfortunately would be one of your Senate colleagues, Tom Cotton in Arkansas, decided to throw his 2 cents in about canceling student debt and the fact that the president doesn't have the authority to cancel student debt, which is, of course, is a lie. Right. So I would imagine that some of the issues that you're fighting on are the issues that, frankly, everybody wants right now. So just as sort of like a recap, what are the primary issues you're fighting for as an Ohioan that you will bring to the U.S. Senate should you win the primary election and ultimately the general?
Yeah. Well, one of my top priorities is addressing climate crisis. I think there's been tremendous movement in our state on that front to just folks understanding of the need to do something there and the economic opportunity that awaits us. So making sure we're investing in renewable energy sector, creating those incentives, at the federal level. Universal healthcare, Medicare for all, big proponent of it. This is one of the things that has been most exciting in this campaign, to just see how broad the support is for that policy. It crosses race, it crosses socioeconomic, geographic, all of the different demographics. I was just talking to an older woman this morning who she said she was voting for me. This was outside Dayton, had never met her before. And one of the top reasons was because of healthcare. So that's a big priority for me. Medicare for all, it's popular. We just have to sell it on the ground. Increasing minimum wage, big supporter of that. Wages haven't kept up with the cost of living, exacerbated even more now with some of the inflation and price increases that we're seeing. So we need to address that. And then I can't remember if we talked about this before, but undergirding all of that to me is a concentrated corporate power issue that has made it more difficult for small businesses to be able to grow. That's why we have, as you go around Ohio, Dollar Generals everywhere instead of more independent stores. We need to have strong antitrust laws and enforcement to make sure that we truly have the ability as workers to be able to get paid what we deserve, and then also to have different forms of businesses, not just giants that are out there and really playing the key role that they do in our communities across the state. Yeah, that's a hodgepodge, but I have a lot more on the website.
Yeah, no, and I it's very important. All of these things matter. And I, too, have noticed the takeover of the Dollar General. It's basically like a mini Walmart situation. And yeah, it's hurting all the moms and pops. And Ohio is extremely diverse as well. Ohio is one of those states that has kind of everything.
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's cool. But again, like we started, at the beginning, what's cool is, but we have so much in common, and I think with the media, with social media, big tech, all of this, with no more fairness doctrine, I mean, everybody's in their corner a little bit right now, but I'm finding that campaigns, politics, it's a way to be able to force people to come together, different people, different backgrounds, and then realize we're all going through the same stuff here. So let's start identifying the real villain here. The real villain is money and power, and we need to recalibrate that.
Yeah, I agree.
Doesn't matter what side you're on. It matters whether or not you take that corporate special interest money. And unfortunately, both parties are very welcoming of it. One of the two parties right now is attempting to sort of infiltrate that problem. I think we need more people on the GOP side that are willing to take up that fight, because the truth is, as I'm sure you've observed, especially in the more conservative part of the state, which is typically in the southern region of Ohio, they're probably not that disagreeable to a lot of these issues. The culture wars is what is meant to distract us, just like abortion and LGBTQ. But when we talk about the dinner table issues, as they always say, whether it is healthcare, the environment, living wage, the wars, criminal justice reform, I mean, you have an opioid crisis in your state, among other things.
And fentanyl now. Yeah.
No,
I think that's right. But that doesn't mean, though, and this is something, especially important in this cycle, because we see some of the national Democratic trends of messaging, all of that. But that doesn't mean that we give up on standing up for what is right and what values matter, and being strong proponents of LGBTQ plus rights, and making sure that we are willing to talk about Black issues and willing to speak out about the need for abortion access. These things are not contradictory, but you do have to have people that are skilled at connecting and talking about issues and getting to the heart of the matter. And that's the risk in, like we were talking about the debate, and putting somebody up that flip-flopped every way under the sun, doesn't stand for anything. And then you're going to have the conviction to take on a Republican in Ohio in 2022. I don't think so.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting how you hear people saying that, like, Biden is falling for the left agenda. And I'm like, what left? There's no left. We don't have a left. We barely have left of center. There is no left. And the Democrats actually think that the solution is to move to the right. And it just isn't serving. And I feel like they just will not learn this. I feel like that was shown to us very blatantly in 2016 and every election since then. And the people that are supporting things like Medicare for all are the people that are getting elected. So it's our milquetoast corporate Democrats are not doing well. They're losing their seats, and yet they keep coming with that same strategy.
But again, the reason that they're losing isn't because, oh my God, I'm so enamored with the GOP. It's because I know your game, I know what you're doing, and I'm not being fooled by it anymore. A lot of people were taken in, obviously, as I was. I mean, all three of us are probably politicos from a very young age, but Bernie really turned the tide in so many ways. I never really engaged in the way that I did once he really got going. And at that point, you kind of learn the ins and outs of how all of this works. And that was an odyssey for probably, millions upon millions of people who are now in year 5, year 6 at this point of their involvement. And at this point, the establishment, they don't have anything. They really don't. They have money, power, and fear. That's all they have. So they can't actually come up with anything that is economically beneficial. And people at this point now are saying enough is enough. I would imagine that probably the biggest obstacle that you have faced during this race has been name recognition. But the one thing I can say, I'm sure Jen can say as well, we have paid very close attention to your race. Frankly, I think that the three most important races in the country right now are yours, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. They pretty much are defining in many ways where things are going. We're obviously a very supportive of John Fetterman to the east. And I think that if we are going to get what we're going to get, it's going to happen not in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, one of the things that we have noticed, and I think this is very important to talk about, Morgan, there has been a lot of nihilism on the left. There are a lot of people who don't actually believe that there is any point to electoral politics. I vehemently disagree. I think outside action, particularly with labor and mutual aid, is absolutely necessary, but you need both. And if you could just briefly talk about that as we wind down the conversation, because that to me is the future of linking the two parts together.
Absolutely. And, this is one of the reasons why after the last campaign, I started a grassroots organization, Columbus Stand Up, here in Central Ohio, because we do need both. We need to be able to meet people's material needs in the moment to then also build trust. And so, we have to make sure that folks are, what's your housing situation? I mean, I collaborate and support mutual aid organizations here that are serving the homeless population. We have these tent cities that the city's constantly sweeping through, all of that. That is necessary. But then we need to feed that organizing into electoral politics so that we can gain power to implement policies so that we don't need to do as much direct service and mutual aid. That is a reflection of, yes, the strength of the community, but also government failure, because we should have a government that is able to make sure that your basic needs are met regardless of what background you're from, your living situation, how much money you're earning. And the fact that we do not have that in the United States of America is a government failure that will, to your point, only be fixed by having people who are trying to get in these positions of power to have them work for us. So that means not a corporate candidate, no special interest, but even more importantly, I would say, some understanding of what is going on the ground. So working with grassroots organizations and being authentic. I mean, I think that was the other thing that people took away from our debate is, hey, it turns out you don't need to be in Congress for 20 years to know what's going on out here. And in fact, maybe it's for the best that you haven't been, so that you are connected to reality and can speak to people in a way that makes them believe that it's all worth it. That's what we're up against in Ohio and other places across the country is, are people going to show up and vote for a Democrat, or are they not going to vote at all? And for that calculation to go on the voting side, well, it better be a different kind of Democrat, because folks have lost a lot of faith.
Yeah, I appreciate, you're so right about like the concept of working with the outside. That is where I think we see a lot of failure from people that we elected that are progressive and now that are in there. Somehow they're not really using that. They're not connecting with the outside strategy at all. They're only dealing with the inside policy. They're not being there for labor. They're not really being there for the outside movements. And I've said before, like, I actually like the revolving door policy on the progressive side. I love the idea of people coming out of like being activists and organizers and going into the legislature. So like that is one revolving door that I think would help bridge, those two things. But that's a huge problem. And we need people like you who understand that.
Yeah.
Like that's a big part of a problem on the left, I think.
Yeah, well, and that's a question I get a lot is, well, Morgan, there's all this gridlock in Washington. How are you going to be different? Just one senator. And I do think part of how you can be different is going in with that understanding and mentality that I'm not getting elected and then like, okay, I'll check back in a couple years because I'm legislating. It's like, no, full court press. It's like you have to be creating the pressure on the outside in order to then have the policy windows in Washington to get things done that are going to be impactful. That's the only hope. And then also having that outside spirit against people that are inside, right? What do we do with Joe Manchin? He's holding up all this legislation. Go straight to him, confront him. Dude, what is like on camera? I don't care. Doing whatever it takes to expose these people who are blocking government working for us. I'm committed to 2 terms, 12 years. I don't know if I could do that kind of full court press energy for more than 12 years, but God help us if you can't accomplish something in that period of time.
Right.
And that's the mindset we have to have.
Yeah. Morgan, thank you so much. I have this is correct. Yes. morganharper.org.
Yep. And MH for OH.
Yeah. Guys, share some love with Morgan and put her on your rotation, and definitely share all the social media. This is a huge election in Ohio, and there's a huge opportunity here. So, I mean, wow, we have somebody in the chat who is definitely on the more conservative side saying if it's between you and JD Vance, he'd vote for you.
Yes. Can you tell the Democrats?
But I guarantee you, if it's between JD Vance and Tim Ryan, he's voting for JD Vance. So with that said, we will be in Cleveland the following weekend. So if you are planning on one of I would imagine as part of the final.
Flyers. I can double duty canvas. I can hand out flyers for you.
We'll get you lit. We just got our pretty new lit. So yeah, we'll make sure we get you some.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's the thing, our competitive primaries, this is the only outreach happening really to voters right now. Okay. The party is not doing outreach in the primary. So if we're trying to build for November, all of it, it's like, this has to happen now, and everything's impactful. Anything anybody can do, all going to direct voter contact right now, would really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, guys, check it out. Morgan, thank you so much for coming on, and best luck. Obviously, I'd love for you to win. And yeah, stay strong.
For sure. All right. Thanks, y'all. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.
I love her. I always, you know what? Every time I've heard from her, I always be like, oh my God, I really love her. And I forget because we talk to so many candidates. Like we talk to so many people that it's hard to pin, and they're all good. But no, Morgan's got to go on.
She's got a bright star. She's very good, and she's gonna get in at some point. It's just a question of when. She's got the right attitude. I love her voice. She's got she sounds like a diplomat. Like I hate to put it that way, but it sounds like somebody that if somebody's going to give a speech regarding very important points politically speaking, like I want to hear what she has to say. And if you've ever listened to Tim Ryan talk, well, needless to say.
Well, and that also, she's a litigator. Morgan was a litigator. So like Katie Porter, like there's certain skills that you just bring. But so let's talk about our next guest, because this is exciting. I always like when we do like a crossover with someone else with the show. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, Meg Slay is definitely somebody that I've known for a handful of years now. She is a fierce activist out in California. She did a really great job on both Bernie campaigns. And there is a lot of juice in California for change. The problem with California is that it's so big and there are so many moving parts. And of course, as we've talked about, and is a very good point regarding this whole idea that, well, if just a lot more Democrats solve the problem, which of course is yes. So if anybody can talk directly to that point, it would be Meg Slay. Because again, California has a supermajority. It has control of the House, of the Council, as well as the Senate, and of course it has a Democratic governor. And yet, it is, if it's not the most neoliberal state in the United States, it's pretty damn close.
It's up there.
If there's anyone that can talk to the fact that electing any old Democrat is the way to get there, we know that's not true. So without further ado, Meg Slay, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good.
It's been a while. I'm excited to be here because I remember when you were running in 2020 and I was so excited for your campaign. So, when Peter reached out to me, I was like, yes, I want to be on the show. Like, I'd love to be here. So thank you.
That's so nice. That's so nice. Like, it's always weird when somebody knows who I am to me. Like, that's always just, like, I'm just sitting in my garage, like, who am I?
Oh yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. But no, like it's thank you for the introduction. And when you're talking about California, it's like, oh yeah. No, it's definitely very corporate Democrat, liberal and everything. And there's people like me that are involved in like our county and state parties that are trying to kind of push the party more to the left, but it's going to take a lot more people to get involved,
I find California to be somewhat disappointing in general. Like my whole life growing up, it was always like all the progressive people, all the hippies, all this stuff. It was all California. They were the first vegans, like everything that you would think of as like what we think of as left kind of starts in California. And yet it's a fake sense. It's like this sort of like very elitist sense of it. It's not really like that. I sort of think of it like I think of Obama. Like I really thought he was going to be one thing, and yet not so much.
Yeah, no, it's very like that's a very accurate representation. And what's interesting too is that they have the same problem going on in New York. Because I was just talking to one of my friends, Desmond, and they're trying to pass the New York Health Care Act, I believe. So it's kind of like the Cal Care, but it's like New York's. And so like they're trying to get that like through and get it passed, but they already know that like it's going to be a fight to get it. And I don't know, it's just like, well, how does this happen, right? Because before I got politically active, it's like I heard the word Democrat and I was like, oh, it's people that are for human rights, they're for like equality and justice and fairness. And then you get more exposure to it, you start getting involved and you're just like, oh, they just say pretty words, but they're not following through with action, right? And so, like, sorry, go on.
That's a great point. And California, um, when I think back to the 2016 election,
Yes.
I think about the type of things that I was discovering that the state party was doing to sabotage Bernie's campaign, and they went to
Yes.
great lengths to do it, including whether it was ballot harvesting on behalf of Hillary, throwing out ballots against Bernie. The gentleman who I should remember his name because he's in the United States Senate right now. What's his name? The one from the LA area.
You're asking me?
No,
I'm a 50-year-old with pop brain. I can't remember people like who knows all the names of the people.
Alex Padilla?
Alex Padilla, yes.
Yeah.
So Padilla is somebody who was going to great lengths to screw Bernie over, and of course he did. And then guess what happens? He becomes a United States senator. So I think California is a state that has a lot of grassroots energy, but there's also, again, it's the most expensive state to live in, and there's a lot of that corporatocracy that comes as a result of it. And being able to distinguish between the two, I think, is a big deal.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, with both of Bernie's campaigns, I mean, I think he really changed the narrative of politics, like how we're talking about it today. And I think it really resonated with a lot of people. I mean, whenever I talk to people that were involved with Bernie's campaign, they always say that there was actually a lot of people that were conservatives or even like Republicans, like registered Republicans, who were like, yeah, you know what? I don't always agree with him, but like either they appreciated his character and how honest he is, or they actually did resonate with that populist messaging. And how Bernie was really trying to fight for the working class. But yeah, no, in 2020, there was definitely at least with California's campaign, there was some shady characters working on the staff, and it's really interesting because the state field director for California was actually good friends with one of Anthony Rendon's staffers. And so Anthony Rendon is one of our assembly members that has basically not really cared about either like single payer bill that's come across like, in California, our state. So there was definitely, some bad actors within the 2020 campaign, just like with like the connections and stuff. And the thing is, I mean, it was just like it was shady. And I think honestly, if we had had more grassroots people working within the campaign, we would have at least won California by a wider margin. Because when you look at it, I mean, we started our field about a year before the election, and Biden's didn't even get in here until like 3 months before, maybe, more or less. And yet they were pretty close.
The reason I think that is an issue that hasn't been fully tackled yet is that what people need to understand is that a lot of these local chapters are completely bought off by the party apparatus.
Yes.
So when you need a particular precinct committee leader to basically be on the take and do what's necessary to field a couple thousand votes in this particular precinct, one in could be one in one part of Riverside County and others in San Bernardino County and others in LA County, they know what their marching orders are. And they know when they have to basically ballot harvest is the technical term for it, where they basically say, we need you to go out and we need you to get these particular votes in this particular area, make sure that everybody votes for Joe. And that's all she wrote. And until the people on the progressive side recognize that the only way that we're going to get where we want to go is if we have a GOP approach to politics electorally, we're not getting anywhere, because you have to be willing to put in the work. And on the GOP side, they value the precinct committee leader as somebody who's just as important as the president. And so that whole need for the balance, I think, is very key.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you bring up about the GOP, like how they approach this, right? Because I think that, I saw very kind of a similar approach with like the Nevada Democratic Party, like their state e-board right now, because it was DSA got involved. And before they took over their state party, they actually started with their county parties. And I think with our progressive movement, there's a lot of there's a narrative going on right now that it's like, don't get involved in electoral politics. It's a waste of time, et cetera, et cetera. It's the system. And it's like, well, you do need to insert yourself into the narrative, because if you don't have like a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. Right. And it's just like, I really want to encourage anyone that's a progressive to actually start getting involved, whether it's like in a club, whether it's in their county parties, just like get involved, or even just like at least join like an outside organization, like, DSA or Sunrise Movement or something, because we really do need all like hands on deck if we want to impact change.
Yeah. And what's also important is that it happens at every level. It needs to be happening at every level. Like, we're very big proponents of local. We think that, especially because it's nonpartisan and you have an opportunity to get people without their, tribe label next to their name in positions that actually do things, people like Kashama Sawant, and you get sort of like, you get the movement where it really matters. And and I don't think people pay enough attention to local politics. Most people pay, like, everybody comes out and votes for the president, who actually, in fact, has the least impact on your day-to-day life, and compared to your city commission and, the people that are your school board. So like, I think it's important for people to get involved at all levels and not just say, oh, okay, I care about this one national level. But like, that's fine, but that's not where you're going to be able to do the most.
Oh yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I love that, because you make such an excellent point with like, hey, the president actually doesn't have that much say on your day to day. Like, that's going to be, your county parties, or at least your state parties to some degree. Because before there's not a lot of people that realize that they have like a state party. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up here. County party, right? And it's just like, for me, I'm a voting member on my county party and also within the state party. But before I really got involved, I didn't realize that was even, an option. Like, I didn't know who these people were. And now it's like, I'm one of them because I actually, dedicated the time to getting involved. And so I really encourage like anyone that's like curious about like how politics works, is just to, jump feet first and get involved, because, like, that's how you're going to learn. But yeah, there's people that I didn't like realize what a county board of supervisors was until, a couple years ago. And the crazy thing is that I really got interested in politics when I was in high school, and it was even like a part of my minor. And yet it's like, you learn about, political ideologies and theory, but they don't teach you about like the inner workings of these parties. And I think that that's kind of like a travesty.
Yeah. And I think, I don't like the whole party thing at all, actually. Like, I think it's the problem. That's the, like, it's like so divisive, and it's just so unnecessarily tribal, especially when, for the most part, they're all funded by the same donors. Let's be real. People that the oligarchs that are in charge here, they win either way. They're hedging their bets. They're supporting both sides. So, from my perspective, there's very little difference if they're not answering the constituents.
Oh, 1,000%. I was just talking to a couple of people that it's kind of right now within America, we're living in like a, we have like a corporate Congress, like they're represented by corporations. That's how they get their donors and their money and everything. Like, and we don't have like a lot of politicians are really representing the people right now. Like, we probably only have like just a handful out there that are really trying to get, populist messaging and policies passed, but it's an uphill battle. It's going to take work, any kind of change. And, honestly, I do support like ranked choice voting and like having there be a third party. It's just like, it's going to take time to even get there, but it's like, we're not going to get there unless people start getting involved, Right.
It's like a chicken and an egg thing. That's the problem. It's like a chicken and an egg thing. You can't deal with the party problems in the party until you actually get in. But then it seems that a lot of people get in and they're not so much fighting against the status quo anymore. Now they get in and they sort of feel like, okay, well, I have to do this and I have to do this to get along. And I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's true. That's what they threaten. That's what they threaten. If you don't play along, you're not going to get good committee appointments. You're not going to be able to bring money back to your district. You won't be able to get, like, there's all these things, but I don't know that that's true. I don't think that that's true. I think that if you're loud enough and people really bring awareness to what's going on, that they wouldn't be able to get away with the stuff that they get away with as much, because people wouldn't tolerate a lot of this if they knew. But the problem is people get in the club and then they just decide, well, I'm in now, so I got to stay in.
That's the problem with gerrymandering.
Yes. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, like I said, it's just a messy, issue. I like usually kind of tell people I'm kind of like a dino, but on the opposite end of things, because there's like, dinos like Mansion and like Cinema. And then there's like me, I'm just like, no, I'm not like, like the liberal kind. I'm like actually on the left, and it's just like insane to me, because this is something just like with my own show and everything that I've kind of just like started to, I really do believe people in general are inherently good, right? I think that we all want to address these issues, no matter what side we're on. Like, we don't want anyone to go to bed hungry. We want people to have access to clean water. We want to give the homeless a place to actually like stay and be sheltered, right? And it's just like, okay, well, if all of us agree on this, then why can't we figure out a solution together? And it's just because like there's a lot of like narratives that are like allowing us are causing the divide between us.
What are some of the biggest issues that you've seen in terms of keeping the coalition together? Because obviously there are a lot of progressives in California. One of the issues that I often hear is people always want to get credit for the progress that's being made. The acknowledgement and that type of thing.
A lot of ego. There's a lot of ego in those groups.
So what's sort of the status as of now in terms of sort of like that Bernie movement within state? And where do you guys see, going from here, continue to evolve?
Yeah. It's really, I see a lot of ego over on, this coast as well. And it's kind of unfortunate. And I see it in a different variety though, actually. It's like usually, say for example, like me and Jen had like different opinions on an issue. And then it was just like one issue. And then for whatever reason, I'm like, well, since she didn't agree with me on that, I don't want to go and like, collaborate with her anymore. And it's just, but we agree on like, like the other 99 issues. Like it would be ridiculous to burn that bridge. And so it's just like a kind of like, I would have to have a talk with myself to be like, okay, let's put that in perspective. Like I agree with her on like everything else. Like we don't need to like even talk about this issue or work on it together. Like, but let's focus on the other 99%, of the issues that we can tackle. And I see that within like my county party. I mean, I see it just like, I'm friendly. I like a lot of different progressives, and I know a lot of different progressives kind of go for each other's throats. And, I'm pretty sure that people will think that I'm a certain way because I want to be friends with, everyone. And it's just like, well, I don't want to get into all of these like divisions. Like I want to bring people together. Like that's the whole point of the movement, right? It's like setting aside our differences and coming together for a common cause. And we can't do that if we're constantly allowing our ego to get in the way. So people really do just need to have like a, kind of a pep talk with themselves and be like, am I letting my ego get in the way? And if I am, like, how do I go and address it? And how do I approach this person who might also have some hangups? And kind of just say, hey, I want to work together with you. Can we at least like, focus on this, even though we disagree on this? And just be real, have that heart to heart.
You're presuming a whole lot of self-awareness that most people just are not capable of having. And like for us at a local level, and this early happened. Peter and I were at an early voting location in our district. And this was in the general election. So I was already it was already post our campaign. And I have a friend that's a Republican, and I'm friends with him. Actually, I met him because we were protesting the same oil drilling in the Everglades. So he's somebody that's very pro environment restoration and very like old school kind of conservative with the environment. So he's someone I'm friendly with. I actually, one of our fellow local Democrat people, one of the leaders in our local Dem politics, was totally like disgusted that I was even talking to this person.
Yes.
And when you have that mindset, you will not get anything done.
Exactly.
You won't get anything done, especially in a state that's red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's really funny that you say that because one of my friends, he's going to be coming on my show later on, but and ironically, he's also from Ohio, like Morgan, but he, was trying to talk to some Republican voters, and the people that were involved within his county Democratic Party were kind of like shunning him for, reaching out to people that were conservatives. And he was just kind of like taken aback because it's like, he doesn't have any political experience. Like he's more into like social work and stuff like that. And so he was just like, well, why wouldn't I go and talk to them? Because I'm going to be representing these people, so why wouldn't I want it? Like, I should be hearing from them as well. And, even like I had one of my friends on my show, he's more like libertarian, like conservative leaning. And I put out his name and said, oh yeah, like I just recorded an episode with him. And somebody messaged me being like, oh yeah, like this guy, like he's not good news and da 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 da. And I was like, well, wait, why are you saying that? And I'm still waiting for a reply back. But like, with my friend that's like more conservative, it's like we respect each other. So we don't get into, those like petty arguments and like low blows and things like that. And it's just like, okay, well, like we both know we're like decent people. And we're trying to have conversations to figure out solutions and try to understand like the world around us better. And if like you're just going to go and essentially other a person, then you're just like doing the job of like the oppressor. You're allowing those divisions to get in the way of like actually collaborating and creating a sense of like unity and solidarity. Yeah. But I mean, and obviously I'm not like the kind of person that's like, oh yeah, like don't other like racist or, anything like that. It's like, like they need to, work on like those issues. But I'm just like the people that are just, they're just like your everyday people, right? It's just like talk to them. And then like, I mean, just like don't come in there with like a preconceived idea of like who they are. Because I think that with a lot of people, I mean, we forget that it's like our values and our upbringings really impact the way that we navigate the world. And it's like the only way we can learn is by learning from each other.
I think you bring up an excellent point, and this is something that we talk about a lot. But one thing that I haven't really brought up on the podcast before, Jen, that I think is very relevant now is that a lot of Trump supporters are working class people. And there's also this huge misconception on the Democratic side, especially, that almost half this country now identifies as independent. They do not care one iota about the party line. They care about who they feel is going to best serve them, if that's even possible at this point. But what they will do is they want to engage with people who are at least willing to talk about the issues that absolutely matter to them, that are of vital consequence. They do not want to play this, he said, she said game that ultimately gets us marred down in, the worst type of political discourse. Right now, I think it goes without saying that because of what the Democratic Party did to Bernie twice, you've had millions and millions of people basically flock over to Trump, and because they necessarily agree with him, but they feel that that's where the populist energy is, and that's where they're going to go. And this is all on the Democratic establishment. They made their bed, and now they got to sleep with it. And with that said, when you have 75 million people that vote for a guy in the previous election, you better believe your family, your friends, people that you associate with, they voted for him. You just don't know it because they don't want to talk about it with you, because they know that you will shun them from polite society because you think you're vastly superior than they are. As Jen and I like to say, there is a thing with the Democratic establishment. It's a word called sanctimony. That is what the party is completely full of.
Sanctimony. Like it's grotesque, really.
And we're pretty friendly with Andrew Yang, and he said, I can agree with progressives on 20 issues, but if the 21st issue is incorrect, then that's it for me. And that is something that we have to learn, that if you may not agree with his fairly libertarian principles, but if you have somebody who is in agreement with a living wage, with the need to have, his version obviously is UBI. Not everybody agrees with that, but he supports Medicare for all. He supports ending the wars. He has a progressive energy to him. And so even if you don't agree with him on everything, what you can agree with is what I think we need to come together on. And that's across the board.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree. I think that the part about like kind of the moral superiority too, like how you were talking about, that
Yeah.
goes back to ego, thinking, oh, well, I'm better than you. I know the best way for you to live your life,
Yeah.
and it's just like, why do you think, how can you think that, and
Yeah.
especially without having like a conversation with somebody and just being like, hey, like, who are you? Like what's going on? Like, why do you believe the things you believe? Kind of get philosophical and figure out like the reason somebody is the way they are. I
Yeah.
think that those are like conversations we don't have enough of in society anymore because we've just been taught to not talk to each other about deeper issues.
You know what I find so interesting, and where we are, on the left, which is okay,
Yes.
our left here, but these are things that the majority of people support. Majority of people, whether it's healthcare, living wage, ending the wars, all of these things, the pro-choice issue, these are things that are supported by a majority of people, right? And so you have to wonder why those aren't policy. It's what I call it's a broken republic, because obviously they're not answering the constituents. But one of the things that I have found when talking to people, I once met with a woman who lived in my neighborhood, and she was very, very anti-choice. This was a very Catholic woman, very anti-choice. And I very politely explained to her that even if I agreed with you, it wouldn't matter because most people support a woman's right to choose. And so if you're in the minority with your mindset, and yet you say you support democracy, then you have to understand that you're not going to get your way on these issues. And for me, when you explain it like that, because I'll say to people, do you support the idea of democracy? Because democracy is a majority rule thing. We've learned that since we were kids. So if you have a position that's in the minority viewpoint, as shown by every credible poll, like all across the board, then you need to accept in a democracy you're not getting your way. And I don't think we should even feel bad about saying it, quite honestly. And I'm talking about things that we all agree on. You know what I'm saying? Like these are not like, fringe opinions that we have. So we shouldn't be taking almost like the defensive position. This is what most people want. This is what we should have. It's that simple. I don't need to debate it either. I don't need to debate it. I don't need to debate healthcare. I don't need to debate abortion. I don't need to debate anything. Most people want this. This is a democracy. This is what we should have. It's that simple to me.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. No, I feel the same way. And then like the thing is too, is like I feel like with a lot of the people that might not even technically agree per se, it's just like sometimes they need to like kind of have it broken down a little bit further to them, right? Because interesting enough, it's like, the friend that I was just referring to, he's more like conservative leaning and stuff, and he was talking about like how, oh well, a lot of the people that are homeless like have mental illness, and so like Reagan shut down all of like the mental health institutions, and like conservatives need to kind of like own up to that, being like, hey, that wasn't not that great for Reagan to do. Like we should kind of like invest in mental health to kind of get like these people off the streets and things like that. And I said, okay, well, wait a second, like you're saying that like you want to invest in, and this is actually the quote that he said. He was like, well, they didn't ask to be mentally ill, like, and I was like, okay, wait. You just said something really interesting. Nobody asked to be mentally ill, but then like also nobody asked to have like diabetes, and nobody asked to have cancer. Nobody asked to have like X, Y, and Z disease or like sickness, illness. So where do you draw the line? Why is it only like mental health that you're, concerned about? And so, we kind of had a conversation about that, but it's just like, I think that when it was presented to him like that, it was kind of I hope that maybe he thought like, okay, well, maybe I should think more about this, right? Maybe it shouldn't just be mental health that gets covered. Maybe it should include other things, that like people don't ask for,
Yeah. And I think once people see it, it's almost like I've seen people where they actually have like an epiphany about it. Like, oh, I never quite thought of that before. And to me, it's the same with like vision, dental, hearing, like the fact that the fact that like dental and vision is not part of our health is so like, in what universe is that? And and the mental health issue should be like every other health thing. There should be physicals. I think people should regularly get therapy just to check in and see how you're doing, like you would for your physical self. And all of that is something that we would be better off having. Like I always say, we're all better off when we're all better off. And I don't get why people don't get this. It's not a pie, people. It's not a pie. If someone else does well, that doesn't mean that you're not going to do well. And I think that's how it's always seen. And that's why we can get away with othering everybody, whether it's the immigrants or, whatever we're othering. We're able to do that because of that. That's what I mean. I think we're able to get away with othering because of that.
When they're only able to put one part of the equation together. If you have there are many issues with immigration in the United States, if being 100% honest about it. You live in California, you're not addressing the main problem here. The main problem is that corporate special interests have bought our government and allow for the influx of immigrants that are willing to work for pennies on the dollar, hence screwing over working class people. The tale as old as time. And as other people in politics like to say, without naming any names, never punch down, always punch up. If you are punching down, what you're saying is, I'm better than you, so I am entitled to this and you're not entitled to anything. Meanwhile, they're not taking into account where a lot of these people may be coming from, particularly in Central America, war-torn places like El Salvador, Guatemala, and what am I forgetting? Not Costa Rica.
Nicaragua, Honduras, pick your place.
Honduras.
Yeah.
So when you're, and of course Mexico, and so if we're being honest about what the real problems are, they all come back to one central unifying issue. Corporate special interests have bought our government hook, line, and sinker, local, state, and federal. And once we recognize that that is the issue of our time, that is how much quicker we will get a lot of these things done. I don't give a damn what Anthony Rendon's reasoning was that he said he wasn't willing to bring the vote to the Medicare vote to the floor. The reason he didn't bring it because big pharma and private insurance have a stranglehold over the legislature in California. And so as long as that is the case, then we are not getting universal health care in the United States. Once we recognize that just because you don't like somebody, if you support universal health care, you support their right to have it. So it could be somebody who you completely disagree with politically. It could be somebody who's from another country. It could be somebody who is part of the Hells Angels biker gang, for God's sake. Bottom line is, you have universal health care, everybody's entitled to it. And so our fight, as I believe, needs to evolve going forward. This progressive movement that we're building, conversations like with yourself, with others that we have constantly. We have to be like a bull in a china shop and really attach ourselves to only a handful of things. Sometimes, in many instances, only one thing, because the attention span of our country is very small. But if we can really nail it to the wall and say, if you're supporting a candidate who's running for office that takes money from the very industries that are stopping you from having X, Y, and Z, do not support them. And that has to be universal. California, Florida, everywhere. And the sooner that becomes the moniker of what we fight for, that's when the movement will really take off the way it needs to. Too many chefs in the kitchen right now. I have no interest whatsoever in being given any credit for anything that I do, because it's not about me. It's about all of us. And so I would imagine that that's a similar problem that you're facing in California. There's more grassroots activism in California than there is in Florida, but that doesn't mean that we're not facing the same problem that we're probably facing just about everywhere.
Yeah. No, one of my mentors, when I first started getting like really involved in everything, he was saying he's more of a introvert, right? And so he kind of has to force himself to get out there and actually be like an extrovert. And he said, I can't just like stay in a cabin with my kids, like be off the grid. Like I have to get out there. And he said, for the movement to happen, it's like I have to think about myself as a tool and like how I can be best utilized by the movement. And so like that is getting out there and getting involved and, being somebody that's like willing to work with different kinds of people, And so I think that that's like a good thing to always kind of keep in mind when you're wanting to have change. It's like really ask yourself, how am I, utilizing myself for the movement? Am I helping the movement advance by othering this person or not being willing to work with them? Nope. So we need to come together and we need to start working together and we need to really show our politicians like that there's people power.
Yeah. Well, I think our politicians should be people. That's the
Yeah, that's true.
That would be
That's
the
an
first
excellent
step,
point.
you know. When they are us, that's the only way this will work. And
Yes.
right now, there's only, like you said, there's only a handful. There really is. Obviously, as proven this past week, the Congressional Progressive Caucus isn't really a thing. That's a, I don't know, it's regressive. I call it the regressive caucus because they're definitely not what they're shameful. So there's only a handful.
You are very fortunate that you happen to have, in both of our opinions, the best federal legislator in the United States in Katie Porter.
Yeah, I love her.
Really does everything necessary, and
She's awesome.
she ironically knows her lane. She has not expressed any interest whatsoever in trying to chase the brass ring, so to speak. She knows that her representation in Southern California is immensely needed. She is also the only known progressive, aside from, I believe, Ro Khanna, who endorsed Nina Turner. So there are others of you out there who haven't done it yet. You know, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for.
That's on them. That is on them.
Yeah.
If I were in Congress and I was unfortunately a member of that progressive caucus, for God knows what reason you would have to be in that, and they decide to endorse someone who's a corporate whore, I'm going to use my platform to call them out on it, and I'm going to say otherwise. And I don't understand why they're not doing that. So you can blame it on the caucus, but why aren't they doing that?
And that's a good point. And Cori Bush does support Nina. But at the same time, you know, AOC hasn't come out, Omar hasn't come out, Tlaib hasn't come out, Gravala hasn't come out. You know, they're all out there. Presley hasn't come out. As far as I'm concerned, if Katie Porter and Ro Khanna and Cori Bush can support Nina Turner, so can you. People really are getting tired of this. Well, you have to work within the system. Well, if you look at what we have, and it's amazing. You have the best congressional representative in the country, and then you also have maybe the worst in terms of their power and what they do in Speaker Pelosi. So you've got that full spectrum of executive.
Yeah, we really do.
There's no question about it. So
yeah, California is very diverse.
Can you believe that those two people are in the same party?
Yeah, right?
No, that's a problem. That's a sign we're not properly represented on the left because we're just not. We don't have a party. We're partyless.
That is exactly the point. And if we had more of what we were fighting for, you know, that's why we're huge proponents of what Andrew Yang is trying to do. Not necessarily a third party, because that can only happen once you change the electoral infrastructure. If we have open primaries, if we have ranked choice voting, hell, even if we have what you guys have. You know, jungle primaries may not be the ideal answer, but it sure as hell is better than what we have right now. And once you get to the general election, you have these candidates that are running in various parts of the state. You have a lot of solid candidates, especially in Southern California, that are running for office. You know, when you have people that can challenge that power, like David Kim, Angelica Duenes, Erica Rhodes, and Shervin Azamani, who are running against Brad Sherman. You know, you have people that are likely going to be in the general election, and there is going to be a distinction between the two Democrats. It really will have a chance to say, do I want somebody corporate, or do I want somebody grassroots? I think it's pretty clear. So with that said, it's obviously been a real pleasure having you on. Meg, please look away at whatever you're working on, how people can find you, get involved. Guys, show her some love and help her build her channel.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. I have my show, like the Meg Slay Show. People can find it on YouTube by searching for Solidarity Media. But yeah, I'm very happy to be here talking to you guys. One thing I actually wanted to comment on really quick is for anyone that's watching, we're talking about like all of these great candidates and like, helping them out and everything. And I know that like for some people, like it can be really tight financially, or maybe they don't have a lot of time to like go out there and volunteer. I think that it's always like really helpful to point out, like if you have a campaign that you really care about, like at least go and message them and just say, hey, like here's my resume, here's my skill set. Like, is there any way that I can at least help you with this? Whether it's like making graphics or helping to like write, posts or something like that, because for anyone that's like worked on a campaign, like at least like knowing that there's people out there that are like going to be able to go and support in those other kinds of ways, because it takes a lot of different people to make a campaign run. And so having those people step up in like non-traditional ways is super helpful. So that's all I had to say.
No, I agree. I always say that when we have candidates on, because I know people are stretched thin, and I always say, look, follow them on social media and share all their content. If you do that, you're help bridging, and building the coalition. Even if you can't financially support, it may land in someone's lap who can.
Exactly. 1000%.
Yeah. So
the Meg Slay Show, Solidarity Media on YouTube. Guys, get over there, subscribe, like, share, comment, all that wonderful stuff that we ask you to do on our channel. So do it for Meg, do it for your country. We really need you right now. Meg is a wonderful person. She's totally incredible. But I am much more in support of the senator from Vermont. Meg, I appreciate everything you did on my 2 campaigns. You really did a wonderful job. And Meg, I may say you're quite a charming listener. I really think enough. Don't let Hillary know I'm off the wagon right now. That's my little rendition.
I love it.
If I went to the Improv and did open mic night on on Hollywood Boulevard, if I'm ever down there, then that's what I would do. Although I would have to bring a mask with me, because I think it adds to the effect when I have the masks on. So I'll be back in studio on Wednesday for Free the Weed live stream.
Yeah, he'll be here for the Free the Weed live stream. We're going to have some in-studio people participating. So given the size of this, it'll be a nice little smoke chamber I'll have going for myself. And what kind of stuff do you talk about on your show? Like what kind of stuff are you covering?
You know what? So it kind of like started off as me. Well, I mean, I have a Facebook page. It's like a meme page. It's political, and so we touch on politics, but for me, it's really just about like hearing from people and kind of like figuring out like who are you and why do you believe the things that you believe in? Because like I said, solidarity leads to unity, and if we understand like where people are coming from, then it's easier for us to like meet in the middle and try to talk about like, well, how can we reach this kind of solution about an issue we both like want to address. So that's kind of the general gist of it.
You have guests, you have people come on.
Yes. Yeah. And so we record it. We don't do it live because I still need to get some of the, setup stuff, but I record on Zoom, and we do it on Thursdays and then also on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Yeah.
We started with Zoom and then moved to StreamYard.
Yeah, no, I know. It's like, I like your setup and everything. So
we have some more capability. Well, we're still a work in progress, but you will see, you'll grow, but you have a great mic. Like your sound is really good.
Thank you. You know what this is? Yeah, I got it refurbished. So it's like half the price.
But it's a good mic. And I can actually, nowadays, I really can tell, like ours are okay. I think we're looking for an upgrade, but yours is nice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, yeah, no, I mean, we can definitely work together, and like, I feel that like there's like a good portion of the left that have like shows and stuff, and we should all just like kind of like create like a podcast union, like help group, being like, hey, there's a mic on sale and it's really good, guys. Like buy it in here.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for there to be a lot more unity with content creators on the left. Unfortunately, there's way more infighting often. Yeah. And you will start to see like the people that are really like the very supportive of new people, like Mike Figueredo. He's always great about getting like new podcasters and giving, like he loves to spread the love, right? But not everybody approaches it that way.
Yeah. Well, I one of my friends said people will show you who they are, right? Like people will define themselves, and I think that like the leftists that aren't willing to really like help others out, or like, that kind of goes against the values of the left, I feel like, right? So it's just like, you're not really walking the walk, I don't know. Yeah. That's just my personal opinion. So that's why I'm like, excited about like us being able to like collaborate and like, have this crossover.
Yeah, so. For sure. Thank you so much for coming on. Guys, check out next show, show some love, subscribe, it's free, and spread it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Bye.
Good to see you, Meg.
She was lovely.
Yes, she was nice.
I always say that. I always say she was lovely.
So I just want to say to my friend Bill who's in the chat, totally don't have to lie to me because you're totally going to vote for me. That's just the way it is. When I come back in 24, and believe me, we're coming back.
I don't know that he's there. I don't know that he's still there. He got turned off by.
No, he's totally there. He came back and he's totally here. He can totally hear me. We appreciate you coming on the show, but I run the show around here, and you're totally going to appreciate me, or we'll totally kick you off. That's the way it is. All right, back to
he was not being nice about you. He was saying that you were being annoying. You were annoying, and that I should go solo. So he wasn't being very friendly. And you know what? This is one of the things like that. When I go on shows of conservative shows, and I go and reach a whole different audience. On one hand, I think it's the best way to reach the other people that you can hear you. But there are people that will then kind of come back and follow you over. That then they realize that you are really left. Like you went on that show and you sounded very reasonable and they liked what you were saying, but then they come and they realize, oh, but you support them transgender folk. And it's kind of like, well, yeah. So, it's like they like you on that.
It just goes to show you that it's just like Meg was saying, it's just like Morgan was saying.
Yeah.
If you're going to get bogged down in an issue that has very little bearing on your everyday life, it's like, at some point, you have to recognize that you're being played for a fool, and maybe you're just not really seeing the forest through the trees. That, to me, is the biggest problem. We recognize what our main problems are, and there are things that we're simply not going to agree on. There are things within the culture movement that I vehemently disagree with, but I'm very libertarian in the sense that live your life however which way you want to live it. It's really nobody's business. Now, if you're not hurting anybody, who the hell cares?
Right. And yeah. Bill, I don't check our guests' genitalia before they come on our show. So I can't tell you who is and who is not what. But Per says they want to see my Northwestern speech. I don't think you could see it anywhere. It was really me in a classroom full of kids, college students. And just that, it's basically the idea of the speech is it's a new definition of politics. And what that really is supposed to be. And in a democracy, it means that your policies should reflect the will of the people. And it doesn't here. And just going through the different reasons as to why that is. And it felt really empowering to be talking to the young people. I feel like that's the best way for me to make a difference. Maybe out of that group, a handful of those kids will get involved in a campaign or get involved in politics and they'll run a service-based campaign. Maybe that'll, ooze out into their little minds and, because the kids at Northwestern, those kids are going places, man. I got to tell you, that room full of kids, half of them were girls. And of those girls, I think most of them were engineering students. There was some serious cerebral brain power in that room. So these kids are going places.
Yeah, there's no question that it is. And the kids are all right. The kids are no fools. And they know what's up. They know that we're in a very precarious place right now. And I think a lot of them do recognize that, we have to be as inclusive as we can. We can't just be, doing this divide and conquer thing. Well, we can't be doing this divide and conquer thing. It's pointless. It doesn't get us anywhere.
No, there's no recording, Pers. I'm sorry. You know what? Maybe I'll do a segment and I'll do my speech and then we could put it up there and then we could have it out there. Go to more universities. I'd love to. Well, that's the only time anybody ever offered to pay me and pay for my expenses to come and talk. I'd be very happy to do that because I think those are the kids, especially at some of the more elite schools, as obnoxious as it is, those are the kids that end up being our new Supreme Court justice.
Our good friend Mo is absolutely right. And then, of course, you have Michael Pan, who says it best. Americans need to travel outside of America to learn about themselves.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Frankly, a lot of Americans need to travel outside of their county.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a lot. Well, a lot of people also can't. A lot of people don't have the resources to do that. And that's because we have austerity politics here. So people can't afford holiday. They can't afford trip. They don't get paid family leave. They don't get that. In other parts of the world, they actually have holiday and it's subsidized. And most places that are what we would consider to be our peers have paid family leave in one way or another. So, we don't give our citizens an opportunity to get educated and explore. We like to keep ourselves kind of very, very ignorant.
We do. But that is something that we are going to change. We're going to have a very fun conversation on Wednesday, starting at 4 p.m. So we have a very special time that we're going live. We are doing a Free the Weed live stream. We're going to have some very fun guests. We're not going to announce too many, but
I don't even know two. I think I only know like one person. I think I know one person that you've hooked up. So it's going to be kind of a fun surprise for me too. I actually kind of like that.
Well, it looks like we're going to have for the first time, very noted, he's pretty famous, I guess you could say. John Fogelsang is going to be one of the guests.
I think it's Fugelsang.
Fugelsang, excuse me.
I think so.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay, Mo, we're going live at 4, and we're going to do 4 to 6. So we'll be live at the 4:20 hour. We're going to just do a little earlier than normal, but yeah. And we will be celebrating. I'd love for you to come. I asked you, I'd love for you to come. I'd love for you to be in studio, Mo.
The studio's set up now.
And Mo hasn't been here yet. So I got a couple of chairs in here now. We could really like smoke up the whole studio. It'd be way fun. So yeah, well, Mo is one of those people that actually has like a real job and has to, work. So, not everybody can be free at 4:20.
That's true. But it's a special day, and
get Michael Moore. I'd love to.
We'll do story time, I assume.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely going to do an episode. I have to put together an episode of Stone History. I'm going to bring out Stone History. I think there's a lot of good things in there. So what else do we have coming up after Wednesday? So Wednesday, guys, special 420 live stream from 4 to 6. It'll be fun. What else are we going to talk about?
We're working on the 25th. The 27th is going to be huge because we are doing a universal healthcare panel with 3 of the most noted people out there fighting for it. Representative Ash Kalra in California, who brought forward CalCare. State Senator Gustavo Rivera in New York, who's bringing forward the New York Health Act. And of course, probably the most noted person who knows this industry inside and out, Wendell Potter, former top executive at Cigna for 20 years. Who basically threw the lid on a complete and utter corruption that exists within the system. It is a for-profit business that doesn't provide any service. So,
and that's Monday.
No, that's on Wednesday.
The 27th? Okay, so that's the same day that we're having John Moreno on.
Having
John Moreno. Yeah. Okay. Please get Anna Consparian's bare ass on the show. Yeah, no. And Turkey Day, look, if you have a connection to Michael Moore, Amy Goodman, or Ralph Nader, I promise you I would accommodate their schedule very willingly, any of those people. I'd be very happy to talk to any of those people. I really want Jesse Ventura. Like that would be a huge get for me.
You'd like to have the body.
I do. I love him. I'd love to get Russell Brand. That would also be one. But Russell Brand is someone that I don't know that I actually want to like talk to him in person more so than interview him. Like he's somebody I want to like sit in an ashram with and meditate. I don't like, he's got such a vibe. I'm a big fan.
And
I'm a big fan. So what do we have next Monday?
And I was able to secure Peter Kalmus for the podcast. He is probably the most important person in the climate movement right now. He'll be coming on May 2nd.
I saw that. I downloaded the book on Audible.
20 minutes. That's all he's given us.
I downloaded. I'll be ready. I'm doing the book.
I'm going to tell you right now, he wasn't willing to come on initially. He said we were begging for him.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, I had it out with him about it.
Are you serious? Somebody actually said that?
Yeah, he said, "You guys, no disrespect, but your platform's not big enough." And I'm like, "Okay, we'll see about that." So
that's not cool.
But I told him that it was, you have to remember that you need everybody. You can't have, and you have to have the courage to ask. The truth is, our channel is horrifically suppressed. We're very fortunate that we've seen, we've gotten a couple of hundred subscribers as a result of the past couple of shows, particularly with the Actual Justice Warrior, which is great. We'll have some clips coming out this week that will also do pretty well. And then, of course, Jen was on Michael Knowles. And again, Michael Knowles has over 800,000 subscribers to his show. He does very well. And I think over 50,000 people have seen Jen's appearance. And of those 50,000, I would imagine probably about 45 to 48,000 of those people don't even know who she is. But now they do. And as a result, a lot of them have been coming to our channel.
I have to tell you, the comments on his show were very nice. Like his people were so nice about me. Like they were like, you should have her back on. She's very like, almost like she's smart for a Democrat. She really, you know, I just thought they were really very nice. And I'm used to when I'm going on that, like, you know, when I was on Tim Pool, it was like, get this Karen out of here kind of mindset.
It's like a different cut, but of course, it depends on the conversation that's being had at the time.
Oh, I can never forget.
Well, a lot of things have changed, you know, because remember, you went on Tim Pool's show in December of 2020. You know, you went on at a time where the country was in a much different place. We were also on the show at a time where Trump was literally trying to overturn the election, much like Hillary was trying to overturn the election in 2016, how fast people forget. I do think that things have evolved in some ways since then. So we are where we are. And I think
nice about my friend Vosh people, because I don't care what other people say. And nobody pay attention to Scat. He's just trolling.
Yeah, that's what he does best.
Yeah, but no, Vosh immensely helped our channel. Immensely helped our channel. But that also is because his people and my people are a lot of the same people. It's not going on a show with somebody like Michael Knowles, whose people are definitely not usually my people.
No. And again, we've got a very unique mix that are here, and we're not always going to agree with everything. I think that's very important. The one last thing that I want to mention before we go is there was an article that was written today by Maureen Dowd in the Washington Post, which basically says, still feeling the burn. It's a very important article because Maureen basically talks about how it really was President Obama who kneecapped Bernie's campaign and went to great lengths to make sure that happened. And it sucks. I know a lot of people out there don't want to hear it. And you have the normie, moderate, conservative, liberal Dems, normie Dems, if you will, that actually applaud this type of stuff. You know, the sad truth is that there's a lot of people within politics that claim that they want direct democracy. They want to live in a constitutional republic, but they don't really mean that. They only mean it if it's beneficial to their side.
Right.
Not beneficial to their side or their ideology, then their attitude is, well, you know, I'll make my own rules as I go forward.
Well, that's the thing. People support things when it favors them. So people like free speech when they're the ones that are being suppressed. But if it's something that they find offensive, then we should be able to, you know, cancel that person and deplatform them. So people pick and choose. And it's not often that I find people, not just in our sort of area of work, but in general, that are kind of morally consistent. Most people are not morally consistent. They'll say, and they don't even think of it in the same framework. Like for me, I always think of it like I'm almost inverse because I am pro-choice, but I'm also opposed to the death penalty. Now, most people that are the other direction on that. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting. People don't realize their moral inconsistencies.
And the thing that was so key about this article, it's a great article, guys. You should definitely read it. It's a good follow-up to what I think was a New York Times article saying who the top 10 Democrats are for president in 2024. I can assure you that Bernie Sanders, Marianne Williamson, and Nina Turner are not on that list.
Oh, shocking.
But I can tell you who is number 2 after President Biden. Take a guess, Jim. Who would be number 2?
Well, I would think it's Kamala or Pete.
Which one?
I would say Kamala.
Pete's
interesting. Well, I mean, yeah, I could see
that. Not
a chance. They're both
of course,
horrible.
There's a thing called manufacturing consent in politics, and it's a very
dress up Kamala or Pete in any which way, try to rebrand and repackage and they can decorate those people all you want. But you know what? It's the same thing as putting lipstick on a pig. And I don't, and to me, all I see when I see either Kamala or Pete, it's Hillary. It's Hillary in a Kamala suit and Hillary in a Pete suit. And that shit is just done. We are so done with that kind of stuff. Clinton politics is done. And it's like, I just feel like telling
they just don't know it yet. They just don't know.
But I feel like the 90s called, they want their politics back. They're not it. And it's bizarre that they don't see it.
If I could go back to the 90s, I had a lot of fun then.
Yeah.
A lot more stiff.
Yeah, you and Jeffrey Epstein, all of you had a lot more fun.
I do not know what you're talking about.
Kamala is not fine to me, Turkey Day. I am not okay with her. Not okay in any way. Didn't like her as state attorney. Didn't like her as senator. Don't like her as vice president. Think she is vapid shell that goes in whatever direction that she's told to go in by powers that she wants to basically.
And what I also believe is that the one thing that I took away from, and Maureen, to her credit, has actually written some good stuff about Bernie and progressives in general. But the one thing that she pointed out, which I thought was very key, is that the essence of the meeting between Obama and Bernie was to say, Bernie, you could absolutely be the next president, but you have to, adhere to the rules of the game, if you will. So you have to appeal to a certain type of audience, and you have to appeal to the donor class. And Bernie said, no, I'm not going to do that. That is not what I do. And I'm going to stand on principle alone. And that is why I'm going to win. And so Bernie absolutely, whether you like him or hate him, he absolutely is a principled person regarding the policy and whether he would be bought by corporate interests. And he refused to do it. We hate to be where we are now. And we saw what they did to him. And we know what the party will be capable of doing to whoever decides to step forward as a non-corporate candidate in 24 and beyond. But we have set the precedent to this point. And like I think many others, will always be grateful for what Bernie did, for how he really changed the game, how he's inspired so many people. I mean, Morgan Harper is running for the U.S. Senate because of Bernie Sanders in many ways. And she's fantastic.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's awesome. She's a great senator.
And Bernie said from the very beginning, all the way back in 2015, this is not about me. You can't look at this as it's just about one person making the difference. This is a collective of so many different people getting involved. And that is across the entire political spectrum, whether it's somebody like Pers, who is probably all the way with us politically, or somebody like Billy Crumb, who isn't. The truth is we all need each other. And the only way we're going to be.
We should also be worried less about labels. I think that labels, it doesn't matter what my label is. Like, let's pretend for a second we didn't have parties and we actually just voted for people that we just liked because they stood for something and had integrity and would use good judgment. Maybe we should just vote for people that we just think would best fight for everyday people and not worry so much about what their personal opinions are on every little thing. This is where we end up with representation that isn't real representation. And that's the problem. I mean, and it's just, to me, it's sad. And no, I have been called racist. I've been called lots of things. I do not consider myself to be that. I, generally think that I have a responsibility to care for the least of these. I think that we all do. I think that my goal is to share as much privilege as I can with people who don't have and people who need, and want to just be kind and have everybody have like dignity and a minimum standard of living that's reasonable and just. And so, whatever you want to label me like that, I don't know. I just don't care what the labels are. But I do not affiliate as a racist. Well,
I think what it really comes down to is that people do not understand what terms mean. We're a very ignorant country in many ways. A racist isn't somebody who necessarily dislikes somebody of another race. Specifically, it's really about somebody of a different culture that they do not agree with or do not understand. A racist is somebody who believes that they are a superior person to somebody else based on their race. That is what a racist is. People that owned slaves in the colonial era were racists because they believed that they were superior to those who were in bondage. Hence, they felt that they could subjugate them. Today, it's a completely different world and a completely different approach.
Oh, I love you, Mario. Look at this.
General idea, general
strike.
I like that.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
We should get General Strike t-shirts and wear them every time we go to a union function.
Mario, you nailed it, brother. I think that's a great idea. I think we really are onto something.
Yeah, I do too.
And I think that, again, same thing with misogyny, same thing with, all forms of bigotry. It's very easy to just.
Scat.
Yeah.
All right, I love scat. Props for scat today.
Well, for a neoliberal, that is exactly what they would say. Do as I say, not as I do.
All right, Billy, the people who commit all the crime, I'm going to tell you, it's generally people, I would say Wall Street would be a good bet. You could look at like some of your top corporations, the Walton family.
Certainly say the most impactful criminals. That's for
I can tell you about lots of who's committing all the crime. Oh my God, the people at the top of the food chain. That's who's committing all the crime. Do not speak to me about poverty-based crimes. I don't want to hear. That is not something I'm going to. That is.
Oh no, they absolutely matter. Don't kid yourself. But let's not forget that almost overwhelmingly, crime is out of necessity.
Yes, most crime is poverty-based crime, and also what's interesting is that crime has been like violent crime has been continuously going down for years. For years, violent crime is extremely low, and not only that, but yet you wouldn't get that from the media because they want us to live in fear. This was one of the biggest points I did get from Michael Moore's Bowling and Columbine, which, if you guys haven't seen it, one of the best movies ever. And I'm not like a huge Michael Moore fan, but like that, they want us to live in fear. Violent crime goes down, has been for years. It's been on that trend. Most violent crime is familial, meaning it's somebody that you know, somebody in your family, a coworker, by far. And yet you would never know that when you look at like the news. So, most crime is need-based crime, crimes of poverty. Most women incarcerated, something like 90-something% of them, are there for poverty-related crimes, whether it's selling drugs, prostitution, check forgery, whatever it is, need-based crimes.
I've been in the supermarket. I have seen a young Hispanic woman who couldn't have been more than 25 years old. She had 3 kids already, looked like she may have had a 4th on the way, and was paying for all of her groceries with an EBT card. And you look at that circumstance and you say, wow, that's terrible. How kids grow up in this world. Yes, I agree that's not good, and that doesn't set a good example for society. But if you're going to paint a broad brush and assume that all Hispanics are like that, or that everyone falls into that category who happens to be struggling, that is what people at the top want us to do. Because remember, we don't have a living wage. We do not have universal health care. We have endless wars that drain our that drain our dollar value. We do not have a climate policy for the 21st century, even though the president has the authority to do a litany of different things to mitigate a lot of these problems, including
employment. And that does not go in line with his fossil fuel friends.
Correct. But again, this is without question, and that is why it is important that people who are on the other side politically come in here and hear this message, because most of these problems could actually be fixed. Now, are there outliers? Yes, of course there is. Jen doesn't believe in the death penalty. I actually do. But that's neither here nor there, because ultimately,
be nice, Billy.
If it comes down to, what are we going to do to ultimately solve these problems? We're going to recognize that so much of why we're screwed is because corporate special interests have completely captured our government. And when corporate special interests capture your government, they're not there to serve the people. They're there to serve their corporate interests. And that is a very, very small percentage of the country. The rest of us have to fight for survival. And it's not easy to do.
Now what's interesting is capital punishment is one thing I would debate on, because I know I'm in the minority opinion, but yet I know I'm correct. So I would be very happy to debate anybody on that.
One issue I would have with capital punishment, you have 2 points on capital punishment. One, it's not full safe. At least 4% of those on death row are innocent. And then, of course, you have the other issue, which is people on death row used to only be there for, at most, they were there for maybe 7 to 10 years. Today, people can be on death row for 30 years. And when you think about the amount of money that it costs to house them, it's crazy.
Yeah, well, I'm against it for many reasons.
It makes sense.
It makes no sense. And it actually costs more to kill people than to not kill them. It is completely amoral. The only other country in what we call the developed world that has capital punishment is South Africa. So, it's on an evolutionary scale, it's very behind. But
Mo is absolutely correct. Most people do not give an F about others. Politics and other issues are excuses or justification for most to hide how they can care less. And the reason they care less is because the system is designed for you to not care at all. And
and you also, when you're dealing with capital punishment, which you cut me off, when you're talking about, like, the problem is it's not equally applied. It's not equally applied across race. It's not equally applied across socioeconomic status. And it's just not accurately implemented. So, but yet, even if it were, I still find it amoral. But what I'm saying is, and I actually did write a paper on this in law school, and that it is basically modern day lynch law. The people that get executed, there are people that have been executed for things that wealthy people have gotten off on. That's the problem with the death penalty in this country, quite honestly. So, it's just completely just unequal in how it's applied. And it just isn't, it's just not right. So there you go.
Let's leave on this note, Jen. Billy, people would not commit as many crimes. If you really want to know how to completely reduce crime in the United States, if we had a living wage instead of people having to be on welfare, the government, that would help. If we had universal health care instead of people having to start GoFundMes, did you know that several of the shooting victims in the Brooklyn subway now start GoFundMes because they can't pay for their medical expenses? But if we had universal health care, they wouldn't have to have that problem. We don't have a 21st century climate policy where the president can implement the Defense Production Act, take our country to the next level economically by putting millions of people to work building a clean energy grid.
Billy, I have a question. I'm sorry. What's your news? I'm just curious. What's your regular news source? Because that's what I'm going to suggest, that you maybe expand your horizons with your information sources. And maybe,
I guess you had to cut me off. I give it back to me, right?
You can have it back, but I just wanted him to tell me. I'm just curious where he's getting his information.
Well, he's obviously getting his information from Michael Knowles. That's one place he's getting it from.
Well, right. And that's also, that's a little concerning too, to me, in general.
And Matt makes an excellent point. If he had universal health care, he might have gotten the mental health help that he needed and never shot those people.
That's always, it's a good point.
Whether God exists or not, the grace of God is that he didn't kill anybody. He's lucky. There's a lot of people in intensive care, but, an angel must have been looking down because everyone survived the shooting. Thank goodness. But
yeah, the gun thing, and when I talk about this, like regarding mental health, I never mean it in any sort of way as I'm trying to obfuscate from the gun issue. I think there's multiple issues here. It's a multifaceted situation. Mental health is a problem in this country, period. It's a problem. We don't take it seriously. We don't treat it like regular healthcare. It's just something that is also very stigmatized. There's a lot of issues about mental health that are not dealt with in this country. That aside,
what I would say,
yeah.
If I may, what I would say is that Billy, Michael Knowles, Jen was just on, Tim Pool as well. Jimmy Dore Jimmy's Jimmy. That's all I can say. And cannot stand Steven Crowder. And Billy, seriously, enough with the anti-Semitism and the racism.
Seriously.
All I could say, could I please finish my thought? At some point, you have to grow up. People can yell at you and call you a racist and an anti-Semite and all those things. That's not going to solve the problem. What is going to solve the problem is you recognizing that ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance is just stupid. And you're better than that. That's my answer.
Can I talk?
Of course you can.
Okay. So yeah, the anti-Semitism thing, not cool. That's concerning. By the way, you do realize that you don't watch Ben Shapiro because he's a Jew. I mean, I don't watch him because I think that he's a moron, but whatever. You do realize that he's the person who runs that network, right? Like he's the Daily Wire. So even if you're not watching him, like it's still his, like you're supporting it. But yeah, I could give you a lot of problems with him that have nothing to do with his religion. But yeah, I'm Jewish, so that's not really cool. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
And you know what? I think if people were approached more with that type of an attitude rather than let me tear your head off, if you will, I think that that's how you mitigate a lot of these problems. I do. And
yeah,
I think
and also, I'm sorry, I would turn off the doorknob. Don't be a doorknob.
Now, let me tell you something. Last thing before we go. Jimmy Dore, you're a real piece of it. You know that? Trying to pile on the other day because the Progressive Caucus endorsed Shontel Brown over Nina Turner, and he put out a tweet saying, "Goodbye, somebody." It's like,
he did. Jimmy, he really did.
Jimmy, the one thing you know what $1 million, you know what 1 million subscribers doesn't buy you, Jimmy? It doesn't buy you class, and you have none of it. And anybody who watches him, just know, you can enjoy Jimmy's content. That's fine. But Jimmy has no class. Zero. And no amount of money is ever going to give it to him. Because the truth is...
I didn't realize he did that. That's just...
Because the truth is, he's a very unhappy person who doesn't care about anybody but himself. I mean, you want to talk about real selfish behavior? I mean, Jimmy has it in spades. And so, with that said, I'm really looking forward to going to Cleveland again. I think we're going to have a much greater impact than we did last time.
Well, yeah, because we didn't get there to do anything.
We loved having you too, Meg.
Yeah, that was fun.
And we certainly hope that you guys enjoy the show. We know we've got a lot of new people watching now, and we're very happy to have you here. Please hit subscribe if you haven't already. And then, in addition to that, if you do enjoy our content,
we'll talk about this. Go ahead, finish.
And if you really enjoy our content, please consider becoming a Patreon. Patreon.com/generational change. Jen, if you want to throw that up there again.
Yeah, hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to answer Matt. He's asking, how can I be a Jew and an atheist? And
well, there's a thing about not being religiously Jewish, but being culturally Jewish.
Yeah, it's not even that. I was just born into a Jewish family. I was raised in a very Jewish area. That is sort of how I see myself, like he said, culturally. But also, let's just say this. If another Hitler came to power and started rounding up the Jews, me saying, but I'm an atheist, wouldn't help me. So to me, that's just how it is. I'm Jewish because I am, but I don't believe in God, never have. It's just not my thing. I'm happy for everyone else who believes in whatever they believe, but I am extremely secular. So that's just how it is. That's how I explain it.
Remember they tried to attack Bernie by saying it was a bad thing that he could very well be an atheist? I'm like, actually, no, if Bernie is an atheist, that would actually be a great thing. Because we don't need every single person to believe the same damn thing. Because guess what? There's 4,000 religions in the world, and yours likely isn't correct. Even if there is the possibility of God, you can't prove it. So people should believe whatever the hell they want. And that is a progressive and libertarian principle that should be followed.
And you know, though, that interestingly, historically in Congress, I don't think if there are now, there's maybe a couple of out atheists in Congress, but up until very recently, you could be any religion basically, but not an atheist in Congress. Like that was actually like the most sort of like prejudicial position to be in, religious wise in Congress, was to be an atheist. And I think there are a couple now. But it's still not common. It's not common.
Just remember, ladies and gentlemen, the author of the Declaration of Independence, our founding document, Thomas Jefferson, was an atheist, as was many others, including Thomas Paine, maybe our most important founding father. Not the most impactful at the time. That, of course, is George Washington and Ben Franklin. But there were many of our founding fathers that identified as an atheist, whether they said it publicly or not. Credit to them for having the courage at that time to do that. when you had lunatics like Patrick Henry that thought that if you weren't bound by God, that you were a heretic and should, kind of Salem witch trials type thing. So there's a lot to learn from our history, and there's a lot to improve upon. But I think we're doing our part. And with that said, we appreciate you guys very much. Patreon.com/generational change. If you like our content, remember to hit the like button, subscribe, comment if you can once we go off the air in a second. And then, of course, we look forward to seeing all of you on Wednesday at 4 p.m. for Free the Weed live stream.
It's one of my favorite days.
It'll be one.
All right.
Good night,
Bye,
guys.
all.